So when you're trying to develop story, you're trying to develop character, what do you pull from for inspiration?
Well, I like to start with the characters first. I actually create a list of my key characters and I write background stories for them. And then the next thing I have to create is the conflict, the great conflict that's going to be resolved as you go through the book. And then I put the characters in the conflict and see what happens. And when I'm into the story a little ways, I understand my characters better. And so I might adjust the story, you know, kind of at least keep it heading in the general direction of where I thought it was going to go. I added a couple characters where I needed a minor character, and they turned into major characters. There was one elf that when I picked him up, he was just an archer. So I kept referring to him as the archer, the archer, the archer, the archer. And several chapters later, he was still the archer. And you know, I really ought to give this guy a name. So I went back and gave him a name, and he turned out to be one of the heroes. And I let him do some things that the story revolves around two swords. One is named Royal, and it's the sword of Prince Rainier. It really should have gone to his older brother. It was his grandfather's personal battle sword, and it has great magic, and a great protective magic, if used for the right reason. And so this elf has been away from his land, caught in our land, stuck in our land for 5 years, and when he gets back, the whole world has changed. Everything he knew is different. His father has been killed, and he's the second son, so his brother is king, and yet his grandfather gave that sword to him, not his brother. And they're trying to figure out why, what's going on here. The other sword, Dag, is the most ancient of the named swords, the ones with the most magic. In fact, the general fable about the sword is that it was actually handed to them by the gods. It has this very powerful magic in it. It is said that if one is worthy to carry it, it can defeat an army. And as it turns out, Peter is worthy to carry it. And it makes all the difference in the world, this one sword, because Peter is not using it for himself. He's not using it to curry favor. He's using it to do something that's right. He's fighting for freedom. He's fighting for justice. He's fighting to put the rightful heir on the throne and get these evil conspirators out of the way. One of the major themes of the book is disputations. I'm in a senior moment forgetting the word that I want to use. But it's about how some very senior administrators in a far-off land start changing things because they're corrupt. And the ripple effect that goes through the land, and how it just makes life miserable for millions just because a few old guys want a little bit more money to feather their nest. And so it's about the story of power and how power corrupts. It's a story about contention and how contention is ultimately destructive. And it's also a story about ideas, how an idea can be stronger than an army. And you know, the bit about contention actually comes from the scriptures where Jesus says, if you are not one, you are not mine. And so there's a theme in there running through about that I have the elf character Prince Rainier say at one point, you cannot fix anger with more anger. And so, and Rainier is trying to deal with a population that's been radicalized because of the Civil War. And there's no more middle ground. And he's saying that the middle is where you need to be. And these extremes aren't doing us any good. He says at one point that history is interesting, but it doesn't determine our future. That long roundabout way.
Oh, that's great.